joining us is Robin Baumick, the Chief Business Officer of Manipal Global Skills Academy. Through its various programs, the Manipal Global Skills Academy seeks to address the gap between what the academia is producing and what the industry actually needs. We all know that there exists a huge gap in the participation of women in India's workforce and particularly in STEM. Now, what can be done to involve more women and other underserved communities into the workforce?
Manali, thank you for asking that question. That's something which is of particular interest to me. I think post-COVID, women have, there's a large segment of women who have dropped out of the labor force as well, and for multiple reasons. So I think while we report a certain unemployability number, I think the bigger problem is what's popularly called as labor force participation rate. So labor force participation for women is possibly at its lowest in India today. Now, I think before we start designing or planning what's popularly called as a diversity and inclusion agenda, it's very important to contextualize and understand the women who might be coming in and joining you as employees and understand their challenges, their problems. What are the constraints within which they are operating? And also for the women who dropped out of the workforce, why did they drop out of the workforce? So one of the advantages, I would say few advantages that COVID offered us was we realized that we could continue to work remotely and businesses would still survive. So the whole work from home concept, I think, is possibly the only silver lining to the dark cloud that we went through the last few years, where there is enough and more opportunity for women to use the work from home kind of a flexibility and come back into the workforce. The other challenge is, however, that remain is the skilling challenge. Do they have the right skills? And do they have the right infrastructure? So, for example, the assumption is that you have access to a laptop or the access to a smartphone. You cannot, of course, do a lot of jobs on a smartphone, for which you necessarily might need a laptop. And typically, in a lot of houses, you will find that maybe the male member of the family leaves with the laptop in the morning, and the laptop only comes back home in the evening, and there is no device or infrastructure that's available for the women in the family. The third is really the whole family structures and let's say potential constraints around things like childcare, etc., which are again very real. And fourth is what I would broadly call as motivation. So motivation is a very key factor, and motivation from an employer perspective typically boils down to the ability to offer equal pay for equal jobs, significant growth path, and of course a flexibility that a woman would need in terms of maternity leaves, maternity pay, etc., which now fortunately in India is legal. I think the whole motivation factor continues to be very important. And there are certain jobs where women also feel, for example, that are not designed for them. For example, jobs in sales. Now, typically, most women would prefer not to take a job in sales or even a job as a delivery boy. I mean, how many women are delivering food containers today? How many women are driving cabs today? And there are certain restrictions or constraints, some conceived, some real, but overall, I think a lot that can be done to demystify some of those roles and make it equally attractive to women. So I think the whole motivation factor is very important outside of the agility that you need to provide, the flexibility that you need to provide, and of course the whole equal pay thing, the ability to give them career growth, which is, completely based on their performance and so on and so forth. But as I said, the last but not the least is really the motivation, and that's a fairly complex issue.